call the meeting to order tonight, and we don't have anyone here yet for our public forum, so we'll scoot on to the next item, which is approval of minutes. And we've had a chance to look at those, so do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments, edits, discussion on those? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of passing or the approval of minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. And then we'll move to vouchers. Again, we've had an opportunity to look at those, but do I hear a vote for approval?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And again, are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that is approved. Okay, and then we go to monthly reports, and Mr. Fay, you want to address some of those for us?
Thank you, Dr. Violet. We were happy to report that we're positive in all departments, that both departments of electric and the combined water and sewer. We have had challenges with these storms, and Dudley, I'll turn it over to you if you have
Sure.
things to report. I'm just
Sure.
glad we're in the black.
Yeah, I am too. The electric department had 79,000 for the month, and the water and sewer had 29,000. I'll show you this. You know, our long-term partnership credit is now 4.3 million, which is really good since we started. But this year, degree days kind of shows you the weather pattern. If you remember, December was really a strong month as far as the climate for utility heating, and of course that got offset real quickly with all that freezing and stuff for us, the demand charge, if you remember that. January was a pretty mild month, and February is a pretty mild month. March is pretty normal. So, but next month we're going to have 3 payrolls. That's one of the two months a year that we have 3 payrolls this time. So next month probably won't be that great either. But I mean, I'm happy with that. The electric department still suffers from that $700,000 rain event we had back in July. But the water and sewer is 43,000 ahead of the forecast to date. And that's all I have, unless you have a specific question.
Okay, do I hear a motion for approval of the monthly reports?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
And are there any questions to ask?
Just
Any
real
more?
quick. So
Uh-huh.
in terms of February then, what, were we off a little bit on what we projected for the month of February? Because I mean, if you look at the difference on the year-to-date forecast versus the budget, it's $1.3 million, but 700,000 we know is attributable to the
Right.
storm. Is that,
I expected February to be higher. I don't have the numbers with
That's
me,
okay.
but I did expect them to be higher. But considering the climate was so mild,
that was just drove it?
yeah, it's
Got
Okay.
our margins per kilowatt, and if you don't get the sales, you
Kilowatt.
don't
Okay.
get that.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion for approval?
I made the
Did we
motion.
do that? Okay, did we get a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes also. Okay, the project status report, we don't need approval, but we'd like information. Mr. General Manager, can you share some?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are now in the electric are tracking 5 projects, and we through, you really are aware of all. We have nothing new to introduce you to, but the Glen Alpine and Chesterfield Drive is both complete. We're just getting started on Stony Fork, and the Crestwood Drive is still in the early stages, and we should be starting something next month on the Coalfield Camp Road feeder. So unless you have a question, or Todd, you want to, anything in addition, you want to state on that?
No, sir, other than we should still complete all 3 of those last remaining projects by the end of this budget year, so the end of June. All still are on schedule.
That's all I have on electric.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good question.
Yeah, quick question. So does the financial performance affect our capital spend?
No,
Okay.
no, what net income, or what we call the net margin represents, doesn't impact what our capital outlay would
Okay.
represent. And these projects, they're pretty much a need to go. So we have sufficient funds and we have sufficient reserves
Okay.
for those funds.
I kind of assumed they were outside, but just wanted to
Yes, sir.
confirm. Okay, thank you.
We have the one project in water, Madam Chair, that we're tracking, and that is the painting of the water tank over there in the Aspire Park area. And Greg has worked and has been working with those good folks at the park and associated with the Hollingsworth Foundation in order to get an agreed upon appropriate color on the paint. Apparently, there's a difference between what you see on the screen and what can actually be produced. So I think we've got that pretty much behind us, and we're moving forward. I think what you told me, Greg, and you can speak to it if you want, the tank required inspection in April, and we should be following something up. The project on that painting part ought to begin probably in June. Is that right? Anything else you want to share on that?
That's good.
Then that's all I have, Madam Chair, on the project status, unless there's another
Any-
question.
You have questions, anybody, for that? Okay, then moving on to the approval of a purchase order. I believe that's a transformer.
Yes, ma'am, we've got one purchase order that we are looking for approval on, and if you study this a little bit, you'll see that we're not recommending the low bid, and specifically because that is a time element for delivery. They're quoting, Wesco's quoted 142 weeks, and if you count that up on your fingers and toes, you'll see that you're just about 3 years out, you know, and even at what we are recommending, we're looking for approximately a year and a half out before expected delivery. There's about a $27,930 difference between the 3 years and the 1.5 years, which we thought would be reasonable to get that expedited on the delivery. But if we went with Irby, that's about $80K more, and it's still just over a year, and we can't justify that. We have, fortunately, Todd has seen to it that we have sufficient inventory to wait this year and a half out, because these are pole-mounted transformers. So we're recommending, based on the fact that the delivery is a key factor for us, we're recommending that the board approve a purchase order to Agresco in the amount of $395,150.
Just out of curiosity, what was the delivery time used to be?
12 to 14 weeks was typical pre-COVID.
So will that ever get back to
Well,
that?
in addition to that, what is the problem is the weather. It has just devastated so many areas that, and rightfully so, they're going to service those areas first. You know, because they just wiped out. I mean, Mississippi has said, I mean, there are towns that are no more, they're not there anymore. You know, so there is a great demand for the infrastructure and poles and conductor and transformers. And so we're just going to get in line, but we're in good shape. We're in good shape.
If they say 75 to 80 weeks, I mean, are they pretty diligent about hitting that, or?
We're hoping that it'll be before that, that they're giving themselves some leeway room. But what we found out with a contract of a purchase order, to where it's an agreement, it's a legal binding agreement, all they do is say, no, we're not going to do it. I mean, we've had that. Now, not only are we not going to deliver it when we said we were going to deliver it, if you want it at all, you're going to have to pay more for it. And if we at the time we send it, we find that we want more money, then we're gonna charge them more for that anyway. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So that's what we're dealing with. I mean, there is, the demand is so high, they can get anything they want, whenever they want, however they want to do it. And because we have a good relationship over the years with our suppliers, I mean, that's one of the reasons we've got space on the truck for them to send us stuff. We're hoping it won't be that bad.
And we have had good luck with Ermco, the manufacturer these were recommended, actually meeting and getting close to their delivery times. We've had some other manufacturers we haven't been so fortunate with, one which we're not even accepting bids from right now.
We could, if we took our underground pad mounts, we could sell those for 5 times what we pay for them right now. I mean, there are utilities that are asking for them right now, local,
Yeah.
asking for them right now, and we are not giving those up.
Are we in good shape on all our basic supplies, or we have any that are critical? As far as being low?
Say, we're in good shape.
We're in good shape.
We planned out way ahead, and because anybody could see supply and demand, and every time that there is a hurricane or tornadoes go through, it just validates that's why we're jumping out here a year and a half, because a year and a half ago, we jumped out there, in order to get what we've got on. And it's not like we don't have anything coming between now and this year and a half, because we ladder those. So we're in the supply ladder chain, and every few months, we've got something coming in. And we're playing defense here to make sure that we're in line a year and a half from now.
Okay, do I hear a motion for the approval to purchase the transformers?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
And I believe we've asked lots of questions already. Anybody have another one? Okay, all in favor of approval of this purchase order, say aye. Aye. And the motion passes. And that brings us to other business. Mr. Fay?
Thank you. I'm going to apologize because it's a little bit longer than usual, but I think it's important that I pass this information on to you. Number one, Todd and I hosted the Anderson County Adult Leadership Class, which goes to our efforts to inform the community about what we do here. We did that this past Tuesday morning. There was about 23 in that group. It was a great group. They all seem really young to me for being adults, but they are future leaders, and that's really good. We provided them with a tour of our operations center and our ever-evolving and, by all accounts, outstanding PowerPoint presentation. We highlighted how Cub achieves the 3 core goals of providing our customers with low rates, unmatched reliability, and great service. And as always, we gave them an introduction to our virtual power plant, how that works, and Flizzr, which everyone is just shocked with. And then we get validation, yeah, I'm on that system, and then the sweet fellas that are not on our system explain how they're out of power all the time. So that worked really well in our favor. Now, since the last board meeting, we've had 2 significant storm events, and while these weren't as bad as what we experienced this past July, they were nonetheless both major storm events. On Friday night, March the 24th, and into the early morning hours of Saturday, March the 25th, a severe weather front moved through our area and caused widespread damage. And you may recall that this is the same storefront that earlier spawned widespread tornadoes, resulting in multiple deaths across the South, and most particularly in Mississippi. While we fortunately did not see any tornadoes in our area, our system did see quite a bit of damage. We had a total of 50 different cases of trouble. And what we call a case of trouble is we've got an outage in an area, whether it's a tree, whether it's a transformer, whether the pole got hit or broke, whatever it is, we've got a section that's out. So 50 different cases of trouble. And 6 of those cases of trouble resulted in a broken pole. Now, it takes on a good, quiet midday, half a day for a crew doing really well, half a day or just a little bit more in order to bring a new pole in and reconductor that pole. So that gives you an idea. 6 poles is a lot to deal with. We've got 9 crews. So we replaced all of those broken poles. We had 1,554 customers that were affected. Our Flizzr system kicked in and had 2 successful events that helped prolong outages for 556. Our crews always and have done and continue to do an amazing job. And the power was restored to all customers except those that couldn't get service because the weatherhead was tore right off their house. So they had to get that fixed. But everything was done by late on the day, on Saturday, which was the next day. And the next weekend, April the 1st, we experienced another extreme weather event. And you may recall this is the same front that spawned tornadoes resulting in multiple deaths in Arkansas and West Tennessee. And again, we dodged the tornado activity, but we didn't escape the damage. We received a few outages during the overnight hours with the initial front and thunderstorms moving through, but most of the damage came Saturday. You may recall, it was windy, and then those wind gusts brought in 157 different cases of trouble. 19 broken poles because of that. 5,727 of our customers were affected. Our Flizzr system had 2 successful events and helped avoid prolonged outages for 913 of our customers. In addition to our 9 crews, 4 line crews, 2 bucket crews, 3 service crews, Todd put together 5 additional crews made up of our substation engineering department. In other words, sent them out 2 by 2, just like the Lord did to the disciples, 2 by 2, to scout what the trouble was. And when they could, if there was a fuse out, they had a pole, they could fuse up a barrel if they needed to. So with all of those, we also got one of our contract line crews, which was available, and put them to work. And then Todd was able to bring in 2 additional contract line crews from other areas to assist us in our repairs. Our crews, again, did an amazing job, worked through the night to the end of the day on Sunday, and powers were restored to almost all the customers except the 1 or 2 customers that were affected by broken poles. And those few customers were restored early Monday. So in summary, 2 events, 207 cases of trouble, 25 broken poles, 4 successful Flizzr events, 1,469 sustained outages were avoided, and approximately 7,500 customer outage hours were avoided. And we're thinking, best guess, rule of thumb, about $250,000 worth of damage, and to what we've now is going to eventually hit the bottom line. So I've given you all 4 of those, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the most recent 2 Flizzr events, because I think it's important to keep that fresh in your mind on how that works, and it's going to feed in to what I'm going to tell you in a little bit about TVA. So the takeaways at 1:01 p.m. on Saturday, April the 1st, a tree fell on a 13 kV primary line on Sulphur Springs, and that caused our Clinton sub, breaker number 254, to trip. 989 customers were without power. It took Flizzr 10 seconds to identify and isolate the fault, and Flizzr re-energized breaker 254 right up to the fault area and restored 224 customers. 12 seconds later, Flizzr redirected power from Oliver Springs substation and restored power to an additional 474 customers. Total of 22 seconds, 698 customers were restored with no human intervention, and that avoided 7 hours and 38 minutes of outage to those customers, because it took us 7 hours and 38 minutes to restore the rest of those customers. At 3:33, same day, a tree fell on our primary line in Dutch Valley, causing our reclosed trip, and this put out 283 customers. Blizzard, in 13 seconds, identified and isolated that fault, re-energized the recloser, and right up to the fault area and restored 224 customers. Total 13 seconds, 224 customers were restored with no human intervention, avoiding a 4-hour outage for those customers. So now, to be clear for us all, in 2016 and 2017, CUB was the first and only utility in the valley to deploy a system-wide FLISR solution for all of our high-voltage distribution circuits. And according to EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, CUB became and still remains, as far as we know, the only public power utility in the country that has developed and deployed a successful, customized, system-wide FLISR solution. EPB, which is Chattanooga, followed CUB with their FLISR system after they received $110 million in federal grants and added an additional $200 million, so now we're talking in excess of $310 million. EPB employed an outside vendor to design, write the software, deploy, and maintain their FLISR system. CUB's in-house staff designed and wrote the software, deployed and maintains the CUB FLISR system. We did not receive any grants or borrow any funds for our system. Now, EPB's got 14 delivery points. We've got 10 from TVA, so it's not like there's a wide difference. While Todd has been invited and has spoken to public power utilities around the country, in Texas and in California, by the way, they pick up the nickel for that, and we've had many utilities come, and we've hosted them so we could explain what we do, how we do it, and we've offered them free access, full access to our code that underlies the software. To date, no utility, not one, because of the lack of qualified in-house personnel they don't understand, or it's a significant capital investment. Most don't even have AMI. Most don't have AMI, which is the advanced metering infrastructure, smart meters. We've had that since 2006, 17 years. They don't have it. KUB's still deploying it. Oak Ridge is still, they don't even have it done. And because FLISR deals with reliability and quality of service, which is why we're so proud of the reliability and quality of service, because we do emphasize it, part of the 3 core things that we do, and it's not a direct additional revenue stream. They have not, to date, embraced the system. Bottom line, CUB and EPB remain the only 2 in the valley of the 153 power distributors that have a fully deployed FLISR system. As a result of CUB's cutting-edge advances in leveraging technology, both with FLISR and being the first utility in the valley to successfully demonstrate operational dynamic voltage regulation, and being the first utility to provide TVA with a dispatchable demand response through our virtual power plant, CUB has been asked this week to help TVA chart a pathway to help, encourage, and eventually, ultimately, require LPCs to follow our example and invest the necessary personnel and capital to position all 153 LPCs to better respond to the emergency load curtailment program to help avoid future rolling blackouts like we saw over the Christmas holidays, and to keep the wholesale power costs lower for everyone in the valley. Todd and I agreed to assist TVA, and our first meeting is going to be in Murfreesboro a week from Tuesday on the 25th, and I understand that EPB has also been invited to attend that meeting. You also may remember I represent the East, one of 4 LPCs asked to participate in TVA's Utility of the Future Information Exchange that has 30-plus members on that panel. MIT did a similar study, and they attempted to forecast how the electric utility would look in 20 years in the future. While MIT focused on the nation, this study only focuses on the valley. The panel includes representatives from Vanderbilt, from University of Tennessee, from the state government, and also representatives from several environmental groups. This group will prepare and submit a recommendation document, which we should have prepared by August, that will feed it directly into TVA's IRP, which is the Integrated Resource Plan. That is the gospel that TVA uses. The last IRP was completed in 2019. The IRP is a comprehensive study that provides direction on how to best meet future electricity demand over the next 20 years. TVA updates that plan about every 5 years. This is important because the 2019 IRP caused the acceleration of the retiring of coal plants and substantially expanded solar energy as a resource in the valley with the single goal of reducing and eventually eliminating CO2 emissions. And unfortunately, while competent, my fellow CEOs and LPC managers, those other three that are on this panel, are new. I mean, they're less than 2 years in their position. So their experience as a CEO is limited, but more importantly, they don't have the vision for looking ahead that someone would have that's been in the business a long time. In other words, I'm not getting a lot of support out of that because they just don't know. Great people, but they're not forward thinking. The environmentalists on this panel are in lockstep. The university representatives on this panel are in lockstep. Solar is the gift from God, and that is all they're interested in. We're outnumbered, but up for the fight, and I'm trying to move them to the lowest hanging fruit of dynamic voltage regulation and the virtual power plant, which, and I put down here 10 times, but it is more than 10 times effective in spending money to reduce CO2 emissions, and what you get by doing dynamic voltage regulation, as opposed to putting acres of these solar farms out. It's a difficult task to do. I will reluctantly be traveling to our next meeting, which is in Bowling Green, Kentucky, on May the 8th and 9th, and I'm going to try to continue to be the voice of reason to these folks in order to steer them in the right direction, so when the recommendations are made, we stutter step a little bit of these coal plants being closed until we are able to replace that, because solar is not dispatchable, and it's going to, when you need it, it's going to be a cloudy day and you're not going to have it. So that's, I know it's a lot, but I wanted to share that with you because it is events that are happening right now, and we are right in the thick of it. And that's all I have, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry it took so long.
No, I think that's interesting, and I think we all wanted to hear that, but I don't know, there's probably something more professional than wow to say, but the fact that it's wow that we can do that and others can't, and
They
kudos
won't,
to
they
all of you all
won't,
that-
and because it deals with quality of service. How long are you out and how often are you
Yeah.
out? And as long as their lights are, that's what they know. I mean, that's all they had. That was their only choice at one time, you know. But this event with the demand response on this Christmas, the Storm Elliott, these rolling blackouts, have really elevated our push to get something done. And we've had, TVA has been out here, we have been over there, which is different than what we're going to in Murfreesboro. This is specifically in order to operationally do what's necessary in order for the 153 to respond to the emergency load curtailment in a timely fashion, which would have eliminated the step 50, which is the rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
We should have never been there, no doubt about it, and we've proved to them why that's the case. So now they're looking for advice from us on how can we encourage and I told them a carrot and a stick to the others. They need that in order to sell that to their governance board, that they need to take these steps. We can show them a business model that will pay back that investment. And that's what I'm going to encourage TVA to do, is to lend them the money and then offset the interest at low rates, and even offset the principal on how they can impact TVA's shaving peak to save TVA money, which they pay 20-some times what they charge us for buying power off the grid, you see. So that savings could offset a principal payment back to these LPCs. Make the money available, let them borrow the money, then they can offset those savings, real savings that's calculated by TVA, to offset what they lent those utilities in order to make this happen. But they're going to have to get the people, and that's really going to be a problem, is to get the qualified people that can make this happen.
Well, I think we're all impressed with what you all have been able to do.
Just little
That's
Cub,
great.
you would think, my
I know a
goodness,
smaller
you know.
district, utility district
Right.
can do what we have done, and a leader to everybody. So thank you for what you are doing and will do and have done. Any comments from anybody? Any questions?
Question.
Yeah.
With all of our deployed technology, are we able to demonstrate a lower kilowatt hour per cost to customers than these other?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you see yourself, every month we put some out. I don't know what it was this month on our savings by peak shaving. They're not doing that. What you see, what we do every month, it's about 70,000, 65,000 a month. What is it this time, Doug? Do you see that? $67,172.
Yeah.
That goes directly to the bottom line. Had we not had that, we're doing it, our $79,000 margin would be $10,000. You see, because this is 69 or 67, we had what, 79? You know, it would be that much more. So what does it cost? You do this, and that's only one facet of what we're doing in our peak shaving. Now, I mean, you get our whole virtual power plant going, and it's all different, you see. So we can show them, and that's what I talked about, the business model, to where that can be returned. Now, I would say that if it's a coincident peak with TVA, and they can show $70,000 worth of shave peak on their demand, callable, dispatchable is what they call it, and lower your peak right now. Todd has literally a square on the screen upstairs, and he pushes that, and it flizzers. The system regulation automatically cuts in and lowers that, not to where it's seen by our customers, because it's within that 5% above or below the 120 volts. It's in that window, and he can emit, and that's 5% right off the top. If we can, and that's all this is ever, we use this to shave only 5%. When we get to step 40, that's 10%, and that's where the guys at the end of the line, their TV starts going like this. That's before we do rolling blackouts. But you take this and offset, TVA can offset what they're paying, and then credit that back to the utility that's making that happen, which is the repayment for the investment for them to get the technology to make this happen.
You would think the customers would bring pressure on the distributors if they're actually seeing a reduction.
They
in their
have
bill.
no idea, which is the problem. Our customers have no idea what we're doing. That 23 that were here Tuesday morning has an idea of what we're doing, but you cannot educate them. They will not ever see that, which is why you rely on us to make this happen. But most boards don't have a clue. Steve, they don't have a clue. As long as the lights are on, everybody's happy. And then because the base cost for power, TVA, and all 153 pay the same, essentially. There's some differences, like the partnership credit. Those that haven't signed a contract, don't get that. So I mean, and that's substantial, as Dudley has shown you. What is it so far year to date?
Year to date, $938,000.
930, they're not getting any of that. There are utilities that, I mean, we got $4.3 million, you know, cumulative. There's utilities bigger than we are that haven't got a cent from that. Not one cent. Now, if their customers knew that, I would say they should be saying, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? Because that's a direct result of a reduction in cost for this utility, which we would have had to pay. We'd have had to pay $4.3 million. And you can see our rates are designed not to make that kind of money. And if we had to pay that, our rates would have to increase to offset that loss of revenue. So what we do is we do these creative things in order to reduce our costs to keep the rates as low as we possibly can.
I would think that would be an eye-opener for Todd to go to the meeting and say, I'll make up a number because I'm sure, I pay $9.30 per kilowatt hour for electricity at my house. What do you pay at yours?
Yeah. We did that to this group. The thing is, they don't, we do it to the utilities. We do it to the managers. The managers come in here at the meetings. I talk to the managers, and they can't get from here to there. I told TVPPA and TVA that they need to come up with a program that will literally write down the steps and the mile markers it takes to get from here to here. The first thing, without thinking of anything, the first thing you got to do is you've got to get AMI. I mean, that's the easiest first step. You better get the smart meters out there, because you can't do these things unless you know what's happening at the end user, you see. So without thinking of anything, I need to get AMI. And there is a business model, which Dudley and I did back in 2006, to show you where that pays for itself over time. You eliminate your meter readers, you know, and that cost associated with that. So if you didn't do anything else, get that going right now, because that takes years. You can't have 30,000+ customers and say, well, let's make it all AMI, because you got 6 guys trying to read the meters and 6 guys trying to put meters in, and they're putting 7 in a day. You see, you're just, I mean, years. It's going to take years to do that. But that can be done. I even talked about having teams with, because I think TVPPA is a good venue for that, where they could literally send out contract groups and start installing these meters. You know, it's not hard, but you've got to be committed. There is no incentive for these utilities to do what I'm talking about, because what difference does it make if you save $4 million? Well, you know, if we're saving $90 or $70 or $80,000 a month shaving peak, what difference does that make? I mean, nothing. It doesn't. It's not a penny for us, you see. So the managers go, well, God, I'm not going to deal with that, because I don't have to. There's no big demand. I mean, my board's not saying, yeah, you got this, you got to better do that. You can do this, you can do that. They're saying, yeah, are the lights on? Yeah. And when they call them in the storm, you know, Harry, my lights are out, I'll send somebody right by. You know, that's all they care about. So there is no incentive to do that, and that's why the stick in my proposal comes in, because if they don't, I want to incentivize them to do it with low cost or zero cost investment. And if they don't do that, and the emergency load curtailment comes up, and they don't do what they're supposed to do in the time that they're supposed to do it, then I want a penalty associated with that. And that's the stick. And then it'll be severe. And that will give them incentive in order to move forward to do it.
You and Todd thought about forming a company and do contract management for other utilities?
Do you know it's like a calling, Steve? And I mean, I'm not blowing smoke. it's a calling. What we do
Yeah.
is not.
I've
Money.
had multiple opportunities.
Oh,
requests
my.
to go many other places.
You could manage 25 or 30.
I've had multiple consulting firms reach out to me
Oh,
with multiple offers. And
twice.
other utilities.
Twice and more
Yeah.
of what he's making here. Twice and more of what he's making here. But it's the
I'm
calling.
here because I want to be here.
It's the calling. We believe in the, we always talk about the widow in the double wide. I mean, we've used that for years. We are the voice for those folks to make sure that they get the best deal. That's why we speak truth to power. We're not gonna let anybody let those double wide widows subsidize anybody else on the system. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna fight against that. And we're gonna provide them the best possible service available that we possibly can. And man, I'm telling you, we are providing the best possible service anywhere that I know of, in order to do that. If you live in Clinton and you pay a utility bill, there is nowhere else that I know of that you're paying less. And there's nowhere else that you're getting better service.
It was funny, a couple of years ago when we redid a bunch of things we do for builders and contractors. Somebody was talking about having more people they won't bring into Clinton. And I kept saying, why?
Right.
If I wanted to live in West Knoxville, I'd move
Right.
to West Knoxville. Let's keep Clinton, let's keep what we got.
And we are. I mean, there are developments which are constructive and timely and in space. We don't want to be a Hardin Valley, I don't think, and we don't want to be a Turkey Creek. But what we do and how we do it, and the things that this board provided after we massaged it to make it what I call utility friendly, and how we presented that, I think has been a boon for the whole community. I mean, I'm very proud of what was done, and I'm very satisfied that we met all the checks that needed to be checked. And we still, like I say, we are very defensive and that we provide everyone with the same level of service and care at the least possible cost.
Well, on behalf of the board, thank you. We are impressed and we're appreciative, and Todd, don't you dare go anywhere, and none of you all go anywhere. This is such a good team.
We have
Just-
got video on Dudley and on Todd, and we're working on Jones.
can't leave
But
now.
he's such a straight shooter, it's very difficult.
Well, thank you. This is so wonderful to hear this and to hear it again and again. So thank you, and thank you
thank
for your leadership
Thank you.
throughout the valley and country.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions, comments before we go? Okay, the meeting is dismissed.